Welcome to the Pelican Brief with your host, David Tapman.
Welcome to the Pelican Brief. I am your host, David Tapman. We are delighted to have the opportunity this morning to visit with Laurie Adams, who is a candidate for House District 68. Laurie is currently a Metro Council member in East Baton Rouge, and I would admit a very good friend. And so, Laurie, welcome to the show.
David, thank you for having me.
I was so delighted to have you here.
I love to listen to it. I'm glad I get to do it. This is so exciting.
Well, we're excited to have you here. So for our listening audience, I know you very well. So for our listening audience, why don't you tell them a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I'm the Metro Councilwoman from District 11, which I call the heart of South Baton Rouge. Basically, it's the Jefferson Highway neighborhoods from Government all the way out to Airline on both sides of Jefferson Highway, Perkins to Sherwood. I've been serving in that role for 3 years. But I tell you, I didn't grow up in Louisiana. I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama.
Wow.
Came here in 1988 to go to LSU. When people really didn't come here from out of state. I mean, now I think we see a lot of people come from out of state. But, grew up with Auburn fans and Alabama fans, decided I want to chart a different path. I went the purple and gold route and had a great time at LSU. Ended up serving as student body vice president and president, really igniting my love for public service. Married a Baton Rouge boy, and whenever you marry a Baton Rouge boy, you live in Baton Rouge and raise your family in Baton Rouge. So I now have a 26-year-old son and a 22-year-old daughter, and they're grown and they don't need mom anymore. And so now I'm in public service.
Well, they always need mom, I can assure you. I have our children are a similar age of yours, and they always need mom. And there's nothing like having that there. I came to Baton Rouge actually a little after you did. I came in '90, so. And I came for work. I already had a Thibodeau girl, so I didn't, or one young woman, I guess would be appropriate. But just for our audience, I served on the school board for a while you were originally on the Metro Council, and we worked very closely together because we had some commonalities in our district. And there are just so many things that you address with that. Like all the time that I took up with you on our school board issues, you had so many, the big issues that you deal with on Metro Council.
I'll tell you, my first year on the Metro Council was really unbelievable. If you remember, we had a freeze in February. In May of 2021, my district, which I think you know really well, flooded. And we had more houses flooded than any other district. It was heartbreaking. And so really set me on my stormwater flood mitigation path. Right. And then that fall, Hurricane Ida hit.
Oh, that's right.
And that was devastating, really all over the city. And it was kind of the moment that I woke up and realized, you know what? All those football fields of coastline we've been losing, it's really now starting to impact Baton Rouge. Hurricanes are hitting us harder. So my first year was 3 federally declared disasters. So I have learned everything you want to know about quadrants and emergency debris pickup and really what people care about during disasters. And I, have walked from home to home and talked to people who were flooded out and who were mucking out their homes.
Yeah.
So, and once you've done that, David, you've done that, you never conserve. It's very personal.
Yes.
You understand how when your flooding system, your drains aren't cleaned out, your storm boxes aren't cleaned out, when your canals haven't been cleaned out in a while. Now that was a rain bomb. It was a unique event.
Very unique.
But it also brought home for me what my role needs to be, and that is looking to the future and making sure that we do everything to mitigate these things that we can mitigate those from happening. In fact, this morning I walked a neighborhood. 99 out of 100 houses flooded in that neighborhood in May of 2021. And I was anxious to walk that neighborhood this morning, not only for the campaign, but to let them know that the Wards Creek widening project is at the design phase right now. And we think that the construction will begin on that next year. Normally, when we see these kind of flood projects, they'll tell us, okay, this is going to take an inch off the floodwaters, or this is going to reduce flood possibilities by 2 inches. This project, 2 feet.
Wow.
2 feet, huge.
So I have property, as you know, in Jefferson Terrace, and I've worked with you on the whole Jefferson Terrace School of Excellence.
Absolutely.
And really enjoyed working with you, and your constituent service is impeccable. Those houses, those 99 out of 100 houses, had they ever flooded before?
Some of them had, maybe 30% of them
Okay.
had flooded before. Some of them are in extremely low area,
Yeah.
but 99 out of 100 was certainly. And one of the couples I talked with this morning have lived in their house for 34 years. They had never flooded.
Wow.
They'd seen neighbors flood, but they had.
Which
never
one of the
flooded.
worst things? I grew up in New Orleans, and our house flooded several times, and it is the most personal thing because you lose so much. It's so
Yes.
funny because even today, and I live very high. I live at the end of Highland Road, so if I flood, something really bad happened. But
Right.
I don't put my pictures or my documents. I don't really have many documents. I scan them, but if I have any old pictures or anything, I put them up on top shelves. Because I'm like sensitized to the flooding because it's so personal.
It changes
it just
you.
wipes you out. It does change you.
Yeah, it changes
So
you.
I know you've been a dedicated public servant, and look, even more so than Metro Council. I know you're involved in a lot of groups and organizations. But what made you want to run to become? Well, let me just say this first. The seat that you're running for is currently held by Representative Scott McKnight, who is running for treasurer.
That's right.
So that's an open seat. So, so it's an opportunity for you to serve in a different way. So what is it that made you decide that you wanted to be the state representative for that area?
So I ran for this seat in 2019.
Right.
I had no idea what I was getting into. Every first-time candidate, you think you know what you're getting into, and then you have no clue. So just kicked off that campaign like in June of that year. I thought I was early. I mean, qualifying wasn't until late July, right? I was ahead of the curve. But knocked on doors. And met people, and really what I came to understand was that the way people see things from the street and the home level is very different than maybe what people see at the state capitol.
Right.
So it really reignited a passion in me. I had been student body president at LSU, and if you've ever seen the university license plate programs or the LSU license plate, when I was elected student body president, like I said, I've been from Birmingham, Alabama. We had these Auburn and Alabama license tags, and it was this license to learn program. And so here I was at LSU, and I was like, why don't we have this? So, just young, and you can do anything, right? Called the Alabama State Legislature, said, hey, can y'all send me the piece of legislation that created this program? They sent it to me, and I went to Senator Laurie Bankston, who was kind of at that point LSU's senator,
Right.
and said, Senator Bankston, we have this in Alabama. It's provided, I had an article, how much money it provided to the universities. And his staff said, yeah, we love this. We're going to run with this. And so a few months later, they introduced it and it passed. And then a couple months later, I was at the DMV and we were looking at the mock-ups of the license plate.
Well, you should have gotten the one. You should have gotten number one.
I
in
got
that
number
license.
8.
Oh.
I have number 8. My 8 is my dad's lucky number. And I think you have some daddy's girls in your life.
Yes.
I'm a daddy's girl. And so I got number 8.
Wow.
And it's now on my daughter's car. We need to swap it out and put it back on mine.
Yeah.
But that, just kind of lighted me on fire. Like, oh my goodness, just an average everyday person can see an idea. It wasn't an original idea. It was an idea somebody else had done it and bring it here, and it's raised a lot of money. I think it's been hundreds of thousands of dollars that have gone into the scholarship funds at the universities across Louisiana.
Yeah, that's really cool. So I was thinking when you said that, I guess you've already passed your first bill. I mean, it's a big deal at the legislature when you go pass a bill, but you've already passed your first bill.
Just an advocate. Well, beyond that, I went and got my master's in public administration.
There you go.
Focused on public budgeting, and then did a lot of work in the economics of healthcare because that fascinated me. And then went to work. I worked at the Senate, worked for Senator Mike Branch.
Oh, I actually
for
did not know that.
several years.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, when my kids left to go to LSU and left mom at home with time in her hands, and I started digging back into state politics, a lot of the same problems that we had in the mid-'90s when I was down there working with Senator Branch, we still had those problems. The Comeet River Diversion Canal, which we had been so passionately advocating for in the 90s.
Still not finished.
I mean, I was like, oh my gosh, how is this not finished? The constitutional changes that need to be made. Anyway, there were so many things that structurally were still the same, had never been addressed. And I thought, okay, Mom's got time.
Yeah.
I'm ready. I'm ready. This is what I really had spent my younger years preparing for. Had
you're still
kids
young,
had gotten
you
me.
know.
Well, my really young years, preparing for, and now that I have more time on my hands, I think I could offer myself up for public service. And I certainly didn't expect for Scott McKnight to be running for a statewide office this go around.
Right.
But once he announced, I thought, well, goodness, this is another chance for me to try and be a part of the solutions.
Sure.
And you know me, David.
Yeah.
Solutions. I'm just a solutions-focused person.
Yeah. So that takes us really leads us right into what I'd like to go into next, and that is let's pretend that last night you were elected, and then we'll have to pretend because there's a space in between, and it's your first day on the job. What are the initiatives? What are the things that you're going to do as a state representative to lead our state?
Absolutely. So I have to tell you, working in schools for 17 years, I was a school administrator for 17 years. Education is just in my core. And so I think educational savings accounts is the thing that you'll see me get to. And there's been some good work done on that already. I think having, if there's a governor aligned with the legislature, there's a better chance that those educational savings accounts will get passed. But I will tell you, working at Parkview and St. Luke's over the years and seeing kids who were in failing schools get an opportunity through a scholarship, then with some financial aid dollars from the school and some parent dollars as well, watch children's lives be transformed. Kids, God creates them and they arrive little sponges, and our job is to keep them hungry to learn and just give them all the information and all the experiences and just know that they're going to soak it up. So that's truly been one of the joys of my life. So you should expect to see me be very active in education. And I don't know if anybody's talking about this at all, but one of the things that I see that my young people need, because I have a lot of 20-year-olds in my life, we got some life skills classes in high school, right? Like, I know nobody balances a checkbook anymore, but it's really a good thing to learn how to do so that you can make sure that, your credits and your debits are matching in your account. Kids aren't taught about auto insurance. They're not taught about property insurance, mortgages, bonds, stocks, all of these basic things. And we know that not everybody needs to go to college or wants to go to college. There are a lot of young people who want to get a certification or go to a trade school. We need to make sure that our young people, when they graduate from high school at age 17 or 18, that if they are ready, if they want to go to work, that they've got those life skills that they need to rent their first apartment, to buy their auto insurance, to buy their first car, to take out a mortgage. Those are essential things that I think we may have thrown the baby out with the bathwater in some of our standards and curriculums. Yeah. So not that I don't want people to achieve, I do. But we have to take a balanced approach, right?
It's funny you say that. There's been some movement on financial literacy requirements, at the state level. Of course, at the state level, they continue to add things to curriculum, which you have to be careful because, the basic skills, in my opinion, are the most important. Yes. How do they say it? Reading, writing, and arithmetic, right? Yeah. And those are really important. But when you said something, it made me think. You said checkbook. And I remember when I was a kid, and you probably do too, your mom or your dad taking out a checkbook and writing a check. You don't see any of those anymore. So when we now talk about a checkbook to a kid who is 15 years old and operates exclusively on Venmo, and I didn't mean to promote them, whatever platform is, it really is a big issue. I was with my son, as I was telling you earlier, in Virginia, and he graduated from LSU in mechanical engineering, and I would like for people like you to try to bring some industry in so that he could stay here and work, but he's working on a Navy contract building aircraft carriers for the United States Navy. She's got a really good job. But anyway, as we were helping set him up in his apartment, I told him, I said, okay, so you got to get auto insurance and you have to get homeowner's insurance and you have to do this and you have to do that. And at some point he said, what other adult things do I need to be thinking about? But financial literacy is really the biggest one, right? You have a certain amount of dollars, you need to learn to manage that, and it's a big deal.
And maybe it's not a checkbook, maybe it's just a family budget, right? But you have a sense of what is the income and what is the outflow.
Right.
It's critical. So I do think we're missing the boat there. And then I'll tell you, during the first race, knocking on doors. The small business owners in this community, David, broke my heart. I cannot tell you how many small businessmen, when I knocked on the door, said, hey, what are you worried about? What are you concerned about? I'm running for state legislature. What do you want to see? And a lot of them said, do you really want to know? Yeah, I do. Okay, I'm going to tell you. When you have a small business in the state of Louisiana, our tax code is so complex. And our regulatory system is so complex that it costs me way more than my brother or my uncle or my friend who has a business in a surrounding state, because I have to hire attorneys and CPAs that they don't have to hire. Because our system is so overly complex. I saw a young lady in the post office the other day, she, probably maybe a year or two older than my daughter. They grew up together. She is now a graphic designer. I think she's working out of her house is what it sounded like. She's just a sole proprietor doing her own little business. And we were talking, and she said, I never imagined that I was going to have to hire a CPA to do my taxes. I mean, it's just me, doing graphic design. But that young lady shouldn't have to hire a CPA to do her taxes. So you're going to see me be really passionate about simplifying the tax code. Let's get it down from 400. Let's just divide it in half. It's 435 pages. What if we just made it 215 or 217? Could we survive it?
It is so bizarre. My middle daughter graduated with a degree in accounting and finance, 2 degrees.
Wow.
And I was going over. I asked her. I said, well, if and when I retire, would you be able to do my taxes? And she goes, well, let me look at it. And so I showed it to her, and she goes, I probably couldn't do that. And that's crazy.
Wow.
Because it is complicated. And just a quick story, I have clients who sell across the state of Louisiana, really across the nation, and they have to file 72 reports every month. And they have to, if they sold nothing into that parish or that jurisdiction, they still have to report 0. And if they don't, they get fined.
Wow.
And it really is something that it doesn't affect me, but it does affect small businesses. You know what else affects small businesses in a big way right now? And I'm hearing it from my colleagues and from my contemporaries, is insurance.
Oh, my goodness.
I mean,
Yes.
I know we've got, because we've talked about this before, major issues with homeowners and auto, but
Yes.
try to get,
Absolutely.
a BOP policy, a business operators policy, or anything, a liability policy. It becomes such a big part of your bottom line.
I've actually been hearing about that on the campaign trail. So those people who live in the Baton Rouge area and who understand the problems I've been working with on the Metro Council will know that we've had just a number of overdoses in our hotels and motels, which lets you know that there's criminal activity going on. There's drug
Absolutely.
sales happening. We've had one child die, maybe 2. A lot of domestic violence. So these hotels and motels have been kind of hotbeds of activity. So two of them have recently sold and to an out-of-state investor who is renovating them, rebranding them, which is exciting. And the gentleman, as he was getting into the weeds on his business, called and said, "Oh my goodness, the insurance policies! Like it's unbelievable. Like this is almost unaffordable." So that's scary because we need these out-of-state investors or in-state investors, whoever, to come in and help us, get these hotels back up and running to where visitors coming to our city are greeted with a warm, friendly place to stay. But the insurance, I mean, it's an impediment. I met a nurse who's she and her husband own several rental properties, and they were having trouble getting home insurance. I guess it's a business insurance, right, for rental properties. Yeah. And when they were at the title attorney's office, he said he was having business deals and home sales fall through because of homeowners insurance. This is critical.
I've had conversations with and I'm not going to name him, but a state representative, a really good one from down in South Louisiana, who told a story in a committee meeting room where there were young couples who had bought houses and financed them that were turning in the keys, not because they couldn't make the payments, but because they couldn't afford the insurance.
Wow.
And you can't go naked on it because you have a mortgage.
Wow.
And so that's some bad stuff.
Right.
And by the way, I read an article the other day in the Wall Street Journal. It's a nationwide problem, but it's really a worldwide problem, right? The reinsurance markets are very difficult.
Yes.
And if anybody thinks that when a hurricane, we don't want a hurricane to hit us,
No.
but when it hits Florida, and bless those people in Florida and what they're going through, it affects us because it's one big giant, insurance is global. there are very few insurance operators that are out there, and we do have major issues relative to insurance. And, I always tell people, if you had $50 million, Laurie, and you were going to open up an insurance company, do you want to open up an insurance company in Louisiana? Because if you do, you're going to lose your $50 million.
Absolutely.
And so it really is a big challenge. So any other issues that you're particularly interested in? I know I know from the flood mitigation standpoint is going to be big, because I think a lot of the flooding problems we've had is past neglect of our drainage system, years and years, decades of neglect, and then the development of those things. But you've been doing great work in that, and I appreciate that.
Well, one of the things, and I actually had a conversation with a family this morning about this. People want to see, the parishes work together. They want to see regions work on regional stormwater plans, so that we're not. And I know you see this, David. Everything is very siloed. I mean, I feel like at the city parish level, we're very siloed from what's happening at the state. I think the parishes are siloed from each other. We've got to start working together and have more cooperation and collaboration.
We really do. As I recall, and you may remember this, but this was before you were in office, but the 2016 flood was actually, it fell a lot in the north of the, let's call it our interstate infrastructure. Right. But eventually a lot of that water moved through and went into Ascension Parish. So you're right. We do need to work together, because water's going to go where it wants to go, right?
Yes,
and I agree with you. But y'all have been, I will admit, y'all are doing great work, because I see, I used to live, my house used to back up towards Creek, and it was just an overgrown, water would flow through it, but it was full of trees and debris, and I know you all have cleaned that out.
Absolutely.
And look, again, homeowners, the challenge is, and I will just tell you, we've worked at the federal level, is that the flood rating 2.0 is not taking that into consideration, and they need to. So when we finish this project, where we're going to raise the projected maximum flood by 2 feet, people ought to get a break on their flood insurance, because it's not only auto and homeowners, but then flood, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And so many people are going naked or without flood coverage because it's so expensive.
It's so expensive. Well, we just did the Stormwater Master Plan for EBR Parish with modeling. So now, as things are fixed and changed, as in development happens, you can model to see what difference the projects are making.
Yeah.
So there's good data out there. There's lots of really great data out
well,
there.
you certainly know what's going on, and I need to. That's why whenever I have a question about local government, I call you.
Call me.
So
if I don't know, I'll find it out.
You always will.
And
you're very responsive, and I have your cell phone.
I think everybody has my cell phone at this point, David.
I think so too.
But yes, I always answer your calls.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So tell our audience how you're going to win the race, because that's a key thing. I mean, you to get out there and do it. I know what you're doing, but tell them what you're doing right now to win this race.
Well, so this race, I think it's just very much my personality, but I just love to get out there and meet people. I love to knock on doors. I love to hear what's going on at the house level, the street level, the neighborhood level. And so, gosh, I'm trying to think. I probably knocked on probably close to 2,700 doors in the last 14 weeks. And I will tell you, if it hadn't been a real feel of 112 degrees, I would have knocked on more. I mean, there were weeks where literally an hour and a half or 2 hours in it, and you just had to have recovery time. Like, we're just not. Now, I mean, I'm not the woman I was 3 or 4 months ago. The heat does not affect me. One of my colleagues had to walk downtown. She needed to get to a meeting a couple blocks away from the city hall. And so I was like, oh, I'll walk you. I didn't even really realize she wasn't planning on walking. She was going to drive. But I've been out in it so long. We just set off walking. It's like 108 degrees real feel outside. And she's looking at me like, why are we doing this? I barely even felt it. So anyway, but I'm just, I will have visited every neighborhood. So this district, this is a really interesting district for the people who live in the capital region. This district runs all the way from the Garden District across LSU, has the LSU Lakes, goes all the way out Perkins Road to Puku Lane. So whoever says Puku Lane in the Garden District in a sentence, and I say it all the time. So I've been in pretty much every neighborhood, and I've got my walk list, and I just continue knocking and talking to people. So we'll also, be doing some digital, some mail. We're doing a timeline, a grouping of meet and greets in these neighborhoods, and really spent a good amount of time in the the areas that have changed over. This redistricting thing, David, people are very confused.
Yes.
I
I was in Ms. Freiberg's district. I'm sorry, I was in your district.
Yes.
And in redistricting, I'm now in Ms. Freiberg's district. So so right now, Scott McKnight is my state representative, but in this election, I will vote in Ms. Freiberg's district.
Exactly. So I've been knocking on the doors of a lot of people for whom Ms. Freiberg is their rep right now, and telling them, I don't want you to be shocked, but her name is not going to be on your ballot when you go in October. So let me introduce myself to you.
Yeah.
But I have to tell you, to me, a representative republic, it means something, right? And to represent the people, you have to know the people. You have to have met them. And look, here's the other great thing. When you get out there and start meeting people and finding out what people's talents are, what their interests are, what their intellect is, that has provided the opportunity for me to have some people placed on boards who probably never would have called their Metro Council member and said, I want to serve on a board. But you meet them, you find out they have a passion, an opening comes available, you're calling them like, hey, I know you care about this, or I know you have experience. So, I find the getting out there and meeting residents and voters thing beneficial on not only for the campaign, but really for future governance and recruiting good leadership.
Yeah.
And really, one of the things that's important to me, David, and I hope it's not a lost cause, but I want to help restore people's faith in government, that there are people out there who really do care, and I'm not going to get it right every time. I mean, I'm going to make a mistake, at least one mistake every day, and maybe more than that. But I'm every day going to wake up and I'm going to try my very best, and I'm going to go to sleep tired, and I'll wake up and do it again the next day. And that's what representative government is about. And in a state rep race, especially, with 28,000 voters, that's a small town. Most of those people should have met you, laid eyes on you, or talked to their next door neighbor who met you, right?
Bet. Yeah.
So I think that's a critical piece of restoring faith.
I love what you're doing. If you haven't seen if you haven't seen Laurie's social media, it's really cool. Again, we're friends, so I see it on social media. But the doors.
Yeah.
I just think that's so intriguing. You could probably do a book on it, because you show all the different doors, and I'm sure there are some doors you don't show, but it's clear that you're out there knocking on doors and meeting people.
I love to take. I take pictures every time I go out and knock on doors. I take pictures. Now I tend to not take pictures of doors that have Ring cameras, because I think it freaks people out when they see you on video taking a picture of their door, and I'm just taking a picture of their door to use on social media. But I'll tell you, this is the funny thing. Having grown up in Alabama and have a ton of friends still there, I'll have people send me messages from Alabama. Does everybody in Baton Rouge have a beautiful front door? And I'm like, yes, this is us. It's about hospitality. People they want you to show up at their front door and feel welcome, like they thought about you and they're glad you're there. So I feel like I'm just showing off kind of one of the sweetest things about living in Baton Rouge.
Well, if you were knocking on my neighborhood, which is no longer in your district, you would take a picture of my door, because my wife is definitely into decorating the door, and it's usually seasonal. So I'm not as much of a decorator, but she is.
This morning, there were 2 doors that had pumpkins on them.
Oh, really?
I was like,
Already?
Yes, yay.
Already. Well, that's great. Well, I certainly appreciate you being here on the show, and I want to give you an opportunity to, any other things that you want to cover with our audience, any other things that you want to add, sort of your free form.
Sure.
And let you basically make your pitch.
Absolutely. Well, the first 2 times I ran, I was telling voters, "Hey, trust me," or here are my friends. Here are my friends I've volunteered with or worked with over the years. Listen to them. And now I think it's really nice to have a record. Like I said, it's not a perfect record, but I think if you talk to people in my district, you'll find out that I care. That if you talk to my colleagues, you'll find out that I do my homework, I do my due diligence, I research. I am constantly studying what's before me and constantly looking for new ways to go about things. David, this is a critical time for Louisiana, and I know we say that every 4 years. but it's starting to feel even more critical, isn't it?
It is, because I think because of the governor change.
Yeah.
I think with a new governor, it's going to be critical, and with a big group of new legislators coming in.
And the other thing I will say is, no matter what you think it's going to be like to be an elected official, it's not. Mm-hmm. It's not. Those first couple months, you're like, oh my heavens, what have I gotten myself into? It is all encompassing. It's all engrossing. So I think with the critical place we are in Louisiana right now, where we see all of our other southern states growing and we are not, how much longer can we continue to lose population, lose jobs? How much longer can we continue to kind of limp along with the new governor, and really, I guess 4 statewide elected officials will all be new.
Right.
A considerable amount of the legislature will be new. It's an opportunity to really make some transformational change. I think now is the time where you need someone who has experience, who has been through. We've been through the ringer on the Metro Council, David. You know, you've experienced it on the school board, and there is nothing like it. You have to live through your first contentious meeting, your first time of opening up your email, and realizing that there are more emails coming in every second than you can even count or read. You have to make it through. You're first getting roasted on social media. Those are all critical. And then your first piece of legislation, right? Because you think, oh, I'm just gonna go talk to the attorney and we're gonna write this up. And then you realize, no, this is actually gonna take me 6 months or 12 months or 18 months to actually get this done. So I think experience is really what I'm bringing to this job, and a passion for not only good policy, but for the people in the district. And I'll tell you, it's so hard to give these interviews because, truthfully, David, there's so many things right now that are critical. I can't, I can't ignore infrastructure. You can't ignore healthcare and Medicaid. You can't ignore, the workforce development issues that we have. Oh my gosh, crime! I know that really. I've talked about crime so much, and it's so critical. There's so many things that need to be worked on. There's so many issues that we could actually sit here for an hour and a half. But like I said, I'm the person in the race who's got the experience. I think I don't know exactly what I'm getting into, but a little bit more know what I'm getting into.
I'll help you.
And thank you, David. I'm going to need your help. And I'm still heading into this energetic and anxious to serve, and just want to ask everybody who lives in District 68, please, I'd love to have your vote. I'd be honored to have your vote and be your representative. And if you don't live in District 68 but have friends or family, please spread the word, and I would be honored to represent District 68 and the people of Louisiana in the legislature.
So how did they get in touch with your website? What's that?
Everything is super easy. Everything is LaurieWhiteAdams.com. So the website, LaurieWhiteAdams.com, my Instagram, LaurieWhiteAdams.com, Facebook, Laurie White Adams. And here, my cell number, 225-235-1554.
Great.
So people can call me, email me. Let's see. It is LaurieWhiteAdams@gmail.com is my email. Okay. I know there's a theme here, right?
Yeah.
Everything is very consistent.
Yes.
So.
Well, it's good. Yeah, it's a little bit of a unique name. Well, I appreciate you putting yourself out for public service. I particularly appreciate the work that we did together in the parts of our district that were common. It made it a lot easier. And clearly I think both had the mindset that we were public servants and there to serve. And there was a lot of tough work in that time. And so I'm very appreciative that you're doing this, that you're putting yourself out there. And I think you've already passed your first bill. So I don't think you'll have to worry about
I'll do my
that.
second one. Well, David, thank you for your service and for your cooperation. I have to tell you, another important part of serving, is building those relationships, building trust, getting to know each other and getting good working relationships. That's the way we're going to get things done in the state of Louisiana.
I agree. Genuine relationships can change the world, and you and I have one, and I have one with many people in my church, my community, my family, and in the legislature and in local government. And it makes a big difference when people are willing to offer that to you as a public servant. So I appreciate everything you've done. I certainly appreciate your time, because I know you've been knocking doors this morning. You'll go knock some doors when you leave here. So that is our Pelican Brief show for today. We thank Laurie for coming. We are on all the major podcasting platforms. You can find us at Pelican Brief 225. If you want to watch this on YouTube, if you're listening to it, you can go to YouTube, and it's at the Pelican Brief 225. And then if you would like to send an email, you can send it to us at thepelicanbrief225@gmail.com. And so we have social media up. It is also at Pelican Brief 225. Chime in. I know one thing Laurie didn't say, but I know legislative candidates can always use money, and I'm sure there's a way to donate on her website. So it'll give you an opportunity to do that. So thank you for being with us. That is our show, and we will see you next time on the Pelican Brief.
The Pelican Brief is an off-script production.